I used a payment app to send and receive money could be subject to tax reporting. This change, if you overlook it, it could cause big problems later. Please make sure to check it out in today's video. Today, I want to share the news that the criteria for remittances through payment apps and IRS reporting have been significantly strengthened. To briefly look at this change, starting in 2025, if you transact more than $2,500 annually through a payment app in the US, there is an IRS form called 1099K. Through this, it becomes subject to tax reporting, and this threshold amount will be lowered from $2,500 to $600 starting in 2026. So more people will be affected, which means it's important to be well informed about this. Let's take a closer look at the details. Before we begin, this channel provides professional information on US law, tax law, and financial planning in an easy-to-understand manner. We will continue to upload more beneficial content in the future, not just this video. Don't miss out. To ensure that, if you haven't already, regarding these regulations, first of all, you might wonder why these changes occurred. The reason is the IRS, the U.S. Internal Revenue Service. They have strengthened monitoring to prevent income omission through digital payment methods. That makes sense. Previously, the rule was that you needed to have over $20,000 in transactions in a year or more than 200 transactions to be subject to reporting through a 1099K. This means that the threshold is being significantly lowered. Originally, yes, the plan was to apply a $600 threshold starting in 2023, but due to administrative, political, and various other reasons, it was deferred. So it is being implemented gradually. Under the current law, it will commence in 2025. If you have transactions exceeding $2,500 annually, then this must be reported using a form called 1099K. In 2026, instead of $2,500, it will be $600. If you exceed $600, you become subject to reporting. So, according to these new standards, there are various apps we commonly use. Apps like Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App are examples. And if you transact over a certain amount, it means that the transaction details are automatically reported to the IRS by these app companies. So this is likely a change in the environment, and the important point to consider is whether it's a personal remittance or a business transaction, which you need to distinguish. We usually didn't think it was that important to distinguish when using Venmo or PayPal, but now we need to make that distinction. Why? Personal remittances, things like giving, or lending money to friends or family, or temporarily lending living expenses. These kinds of transactions are non-taxable. For example, it's very common to split the cost of lunch and send your share to a friend. I also use it mostly for that purpose, and in that case, it's not considered income. However, in contrast, if you receive money as compensation after selling a product or providing a service, this can be considered self-employment income or business income. Therefore, if it exceeds the reporting threshold mentioned earlier, it must be reported. That's why you should also separate personal accounts from business accounts. You should also meticulously organize transaction records to prove later that it was a personal remittance. If you don't separate these and mix them up, you might increase unnecessary audit risks or face a higher chance of fines, so you should be cautious. Then, there's something you're most curious about, right? You might think it's similar to PayPal, but this is an exception. This is one of the reasons why you should use Zelle. I covered this in a video before. Many people use Zelle, and as of now, Zelle is not subject to issuing a 1099K. The reason is that, unlike other apps, Zelle does not hold or mediate money. It doesn't act as an intermediary where cash passes through, but rather it simply serves as a platform that connects bank-to-bank transfers. Services like PayPal and Venmo are considered third-party payment intermediaries under current IRS standards because the company holds or deposits users' money and directly manages transactions. However, as I mentioned earlier, Zelle is excluded under the current standards because it does not directly handle transactions but only connects bank-to-bank transfers. However, we don't know how the law might change in the future. So, it would be advisable to clearly specify the purpose of transactions when using Zelle, as I mentioned earlier. The next question is, then, is there no possibility of it rising back to $20,000? Previously, it was delayed for various administrative and political reasons, wasn't it? So, in relation to this, actually not long ago from the Republican side, there was a proposal to revert the digital payment app reporting standards to their original state. However, since it has already been postponed multiple times and is now set as a regulation, it seems unlikely that the $600 standard, which is to be applied from 2025 and 2026, will be withdrawn or relaxed. Also, currently, it is being gradually lowered from $2,500 to $600. It would be wise to be thoroughly prepared. Once again, the first thing is to clearly separate personal transactions from business transactions. It's also advisable to use separate accounts for personal and business purposes in payment apps. And if there is any income, it should be reported accurately. Self-employed individuals, freelancers, or those selling online should record settlement details for each app. It's necessary to anticipate when the 1099 form will be issued. If you're unsure about what to do, I think it's worth discussing these regulatory changes with a professional who can help. That's it for now. Regarding payment, we looked at how the criteria for income reported to the IRS on the 1099K form are changing, and what points to be cautious about. As the criteria are gradually lowered, more transaction details will be reported to the IRS. Separate transactions between personal and business. If necessary, consult with a professional about these regulatory changes. It's important to prepare so you can handle it safely. That's all for today's content. I hope this was helpful. I believe there are many people around you who need this kind of information. As I always say, this channel is a space for growing together with you. Please help us grow. Subscribe and like so you don't miss out on essential information next time. Also, please help spread and share this information with those around you. Thank you.